Welcome back to the deep dive. When we talk about cybersecurity, we often get stuck on the technology, the firewalls, the encryption, software updates.
Mhm.
But today, we are diving deep into something else. The real strategic genius of the modern cybercriminal.
And it's not really about technical brilliance.
Not at all. It's their uncanny ability to exploit human nature.
Yeah.
And, nothing is more central to human nature than taking a holiday.
That is the hard truth. I mean, if you believe for a second that these organized cybercrime groups shut down when the festive season begins, you are making a strategic mistake.
It's a very costly one.
A mistake that will cost you millions. They are. They're relentless, they're professional strategists, and their central idea is simple.
Attack when defenses are down.
Exactly.
Mm.
When the staff is distracted, and crucially, when the organizational pressure to recover quickly is at its absolute peak.
And that's why we're here today. We are peeling back the curtain on this alarming, persistent, and growing spike in ransomware attacks.
The ones that happen specifically during peak seasonal and holiday periods.
Right. And we're putting a sharp focus on organizations in Australia and New Zealand, or ANZ, because they are currently grappling with this threat in a particularly painful way.
Yeah, we've distilled this dive from some pretty critical data. We're looking at the 2025 Ransomware Holiday Risk Report and a few other cybersecurity alerts.
And our mission for you is direct. We want to deliver a rapid but thorough understanding of this tactical shift toward holiday targeting.
And maybe more importantly, why the sort of strong perceived preparedness in the ANZ region is so fundamentally mismatched with the painful reality of their recovery times.
To set the stage for just how urgent this conversation is, let's just jump right into the core numbers that define this crisis.
The statistics are frankly shocking. 78% of organizations in Australia and New Zealand reported being hit by ransomware in the past year alone.
78%.
That number puts ANZ as the third most targeted region on the entire planet.
Wow. Who's ahead of them?
Only Germany at 89% and the United States at 81%. I mean, this is a region under siege.
Almost 4 out of 5 organizations dealing with a successful, impactful attack in a single year. That's incredible.
And here's the paradox that really defines the vulnerability we're going to be talking about today.
This is the part that I just can't get my head around.
Despite that astronomical attack rate, 55% of ANZ organizations still feel very prepared for a major ransomware incident.
Very prepared.
Yet their actual recovery times are among the slowest in the entire world.
That confidence to capability gap is a massive flashing red light. Okay, so let's start with that 78% number. I mean, that's not an anomaly. That suggests that threat actors are actively prioritizing this region.
Absolutely.
What makes ANZ such a high-value target for a strategic attack, especially around the holidays?
You hit the key word right there, strategic. The high rate of successful attacks, it tells us this is not random activity.
They're not just throwing darts at a map.
Not at all. It's a deliberate choice by sophisticated criminal groups. The source material confirms that these threat actors have mapped out specific weaknesses in ANZ companies.
Weaknesses related to what? Staffing?
Especially staffing and operational structure, which
Yeah.
become, critical liabilities when the country slows down for holidays. They are exploiting organizational limitations.
And we keep coming back to that psychological disconnect. Half the businesses think they're ready, but the data screams that they're not. What are they missing?
It's more complex than just underestimating the attacker. They have confidence in their, let's call them, historical defenses,
Okay.
but they lack the resilience required to counter the complexity of a modern ransomware attack.
Especially when it's not just a simple file encryption.
Exactly. Especially when attacks target advanced systems, like their identity management infrastructure, what the report aptly calls the linchpins of corporate networks.
Right.
If you haven't tested what it takes to recover after your identity system has been completely compromised, you can't truly say you're prepared.
And when we look at why the holidays are the moment of choice, I mean, it's just a brilliant piece of criminal strategic thinking.
It is. As Chris Inglis, the former U.S. National Cyber Director, noted, these attacks are engineered to strike at peak vulnerability.
The moment everyone's thinking about family or travel.
Yeah, the moment employees are preoccupied, their vigilance just plummets. This creates an environment where that initial compromise is way easier, and any subsequent movement through the network goes unnoticed for much, much longer.
It shifts the entire economics of the attack for the criminal.
Oh, so.
Well, when operations are already stressed because of the season, the pressure to pay to restore functionality before, say, a massive post-Christmas sales rush or before a new fiscal quarter begins.
It becomes overwhelming.
Exactly.
And that pressure drives up the potential ransom payment because the criminals know the business is desperate. But let's get specific about ANZ.
Okay.
Beyond the general holiday distraction, there are some unique operational factors that really amplify this vulnerability.
Let's connect those dots. I mean, if an organization has a Global Security Operations Center, a SOC, in place, why does an ANZ holiday still pose such a unique threat?
The first major factor is the time zone disadvantage, and it is critical.
Okay, paint a picture for us.
Imagine a large regional company. An incident triggers at, say, 2 a.m. local Sydney time on Boxing Day.
So dead of night, major public holiday.
Right. And that specific time window is strategically selected because it often falls during the deepest sleep hours locally, and it often corresponds to mid-morning or early evening on Christmas Eve in North America or Europe.
Ah, so the global SOC is already running on a skeleton crew.
A skeleton crew that's focused on their own regional holiday issues. The people who can provide that high-level specialized assistance are running at 10% capacity dealing with their own fire drills.
So the local ANZ team is already down 50% for the holiday, and their global backup is compromised too.
Exactly. And this time lag, it doesn't just delay an email. It means the critical first 3 to 4 hours of a complex breach.
Just golden hours for the attacker.
Right. When the attacker is mapping the network, staging payloads, and setting up persistence, all of that is being handled by the least resourced, most stressed team, often relying on global protocols that don't account for these extreme staffing shortages.
That's a massive operational delay just baked right into the structure. What about the infrastructure itself?
The source material suggests many ANZ businesses, particularly mid-market companies, that make up a huge part of the region's economy. They tend to have less redundant IT infrastructures compared to similar-sized organizations in Europe or North America.
So fewer fail-safes.
Fewer fail-safes. This isn't about a lack of investment necessarily, but often a matter of scale and operational priorities. If a critical system is taken offline, say the core financial server or a logistics application, the result is massive operational disruption much faster. It just makes that shock and awe approach of ransomware highly, highly effective.
And that brings us back to the security maturity gap.
Yeah.
If the infrastructure is less redundant, the defensive posture has to be impeccable. So what's consistently failing in the ANZ region?
The report highlights that while the foundational security measures are there, basic firewalls, antivirus.
The basics are covered.
The basics are covered, but the advanced modern protection is what's missing, specifically around identity protection and comprehensive cloud security.
Yeah, the newer stuff.
Right. As organizations rush to the cloud and remote work, they often prioritize speed over rigorous security controls. This gap in what we call identity threat detection and response capabilities.
The ability to spot subtle attacks against Active Directory or Entra ID.
Exactly that. That gap is precisely what the attackers leverage to get elevated privileges and move laterally through the network before the encryption bomb even goes off.
So they're not just breaking down the front door.
No, they're exploiting the keys to the entire castle.
To really grasp the success rate of these holiday attacks, we have to look at the human vulnerability that the criminals are targeting. This organizational staff vacuum is their core strategic advantage. And the numbers here are startling. IT security staffing can drop by 50% or more during holidays. In some places, I'm sure it's far worse.
It is.
How does a 50% staff reduction translate into such a huge tactical advantage for the attacker?
It creates a resource disaster for the defense. The remaining few people are not only trying to manage twice the workload, but they're dealing with alerts from systems designed for full staffing.
Right.
The source explicitly calls this the creation of significant vulnerabilities that advanced cybercriminals are specifically trained to spot and take advantage of.
It's a known weakness.
It is. If your typical 24-hour cycle requires detailed review of complex alerts by multiple specialists, network engineers, identity experts, forensic analysts, and you're suddenly down to 2 or 3 generalists, the necessary comprehensive coordinated response it falls apart.
So the criminals aren't relying on some fancy zero-day exploit. They're relying on organizational exhaustion and a failure of staffing.
Precisely. Fewer human eyes on the screen means many subtle warning signs go completely undetected until the attack is already in that devastating late-stage encryption phase.
Which leads directly to the data on detection times. And this is maybe the most condemning evidence of the whole holiday playbook.
Yeah, let's run through that data because the contrast is horrifying.
Okay.
On a normal business day, when systems are busy and staff are vigilant, the average detection time for ransomware is about 4.5 hours.
Which is already too long.
It's already too long, but during the holiday season, that time more than doubles. It averages over 9 hours.
9 hours.
So you have to ask yourself, what can an advanced threat actor do with an extra 4.5 hours completely unobserved inside your network?
They're not wasting that time. They are maximizing their damage, finding the crown jewels, staging their payload.
And the data proves they're successful. During normal business days, only 43% of attacks are discovered after encryption begins.
Which is bad, but it means most are caught before the final damage is done.
Right, 57% are caught during the intrusion phase. But during the holidays, the situation reverses dramatically. 76% of attacks are only spotted after the ransom note is already flashing on the screen.
76%. Nearly 3/4 of holiday attacks achieve their destructive goal before anyone even knows they're there.
And the clock is ticking faster than ever. We hear constantly that the average time from initial access to full network encryption is 72 hours, but that timeline is shrinking.
It is, and the speed is terrifying.
While 72 hours might be the average for a full network compromise, the time required to encrypt the critical systems,
The things that actually run the business.
the databases, the Active Directory servers, the logistics platforms that actually paralyze the business,
Wow.
the time is dramatically shorter. We're talking under 45 minutes from the start of the encryption phase.
Wow.
So if your detection is delayed by 9 hours, the attackers have not only mapped your network and staged their payloads, they're
Yeah.
just waiting for the perfect moment to pull the trigger.
Which would be late on a Friday night, before a long weekend.
Typically, right before a holiday weekend or late in the evening when they know the single remaining security analyst is getting ready to hand off to the next understaffed shift.
So the attacker leverages the preoccupied or just plain relaxed IT staff as their greatest asset.
Absolutely. They are expert behavioral psychologists. They know staff are more likely to overlook irregularities simply because they're juggling more or thinking about personal plans or just expecting low network traffic.
So they don't come in with guns blazing.
No, the attacker takes advantage by not hitting hard immediately. They slowly ramp up their activities, often using subtle reconnaissance that stays just under the threshold of what would trigger a high-priority alert during normal operations. They're just lurking, setting tripwires, preparing.
And the organizational failure is often not adapting their processes to this reality. The escalation procedures are built for a Tuesday in March, not Christmas Eve.
That's the core vulnerability. Your security information and event management system, your SAM, it might still be set to trigger an alert for 5 suspicious logins in an hour. But if the one person reviewing that alert is also responsible for 3 other crises, that alert gets delayed or downgraded or just buried. The gap between detection and response widens precisely when the attackers are most active.
This strategic pattern is it's undeniable.
It is completely intentional. When you look at the data, 53% of U.S. attacks occur on weekends or holidays. It reinforces that this is the global playbook.
They are systematically choosing moments of maximum organizational weakness.
They guarantee high impact, maximum disruption, and ultimately the highest possible ransom payout. Now, if the strategic targeting is alarming, the most concerning revelation for the ANZ region and the real driver of their financial losses is the sheer ineffectiveness of their recovery when these attacks inevitably hit.
And this is where that high confidence figure, that 55% who feel very prepared, crashes violently into the statistics. The gap between what businesses think they can do and what they actually do seems wider in ANZ than almost anywhere else.
We really need to detail this expectation mismatch. When they were surveyed, 86% of businesses in ANZ confidently believe they can recover their critical systems within 24 hours of a ransomware attack.
86%. That reflects a huge amount of trust in their backups and their incident response teams.
It's nearly unanimous confidence.
But the reality is a complete failure of that confidence.
The devastating reality is that just 9% of those businesses actually managed to recover their critical systems in that 24-hour window.
9%.
Just think about that gap for a second. An 86% expectation versus a 9% reality.
It's one of the most significant gaps we see in the entire global survey. It indicates a fundamental flaw in how they're thinking about preparedness.
It really does.
Let's put that 9% recovery rate into context with their peer nations, because it really underscores the specific challenges facing ANZ.
Okay, looking at those 24-hour critical system recovery rates, North America manages a 27% real recovery rate.
So still not great, but 3 times better.
3 times better. Europe manages 23%, and ANZ, as we said, is stranded way down at 9%.
And it gets worse when you look at full recovery, right?
The picture gets much worse when we analyze the average time needed for full operational recovery. North America averages 5.2 days for a full restoration.
A full business week.
Right. Europe averages 6.7 days. ANZ organizations require a staggering 8.3 days average for full recovery.
Over 8 days. That means an attack launched on a Friday could keep a business critically disabled for nearly 2 full working weeks before they get back to normal.
And that additional time is devastatingly expensive. This is where we need to deconstruct the financial toll.
Okay.
The source material calculates that each additional day of downtime costs ANZ businesses an average of $250,000.
$250,000 a day.
In direct expenses and lost income. But what is that money specifically paying for? It's not just lost sales, is it?
No, I imagine it's much more than that.
Far from it. That $250,000 per day covers several painful things. First, the direct forensic costs and the expense of hiring external recovery experts who charge premium round-the-clock rates during a crisis. Second, lost income from halted production or services. Third, and this is critical, potential regulatory fines related to breach notification timelines, especially if the delay pushes them past compliance deadlines.
And what's fourth?
And fourth, if the breach involved data exfiltration, the loss of future contracts, and the massive cost of remediation and credit monitoring services for all the affected customers.
So when you're 3 days behind North America, that's an extra $750,000 just compounding the financial strain.
Right, and that cost structure highlights exactly why organizations pay the ransom, even when law enforcement advises against it.
When the financial burn rate is $250,000 a day, paying a $1 million ransom might seem like the economically rational choice, even if it's risky.
It becomes a decision between crippling the business long-term or paying to survive the immediate crisis.
Yeah.
And this is all rooted in that misplaced confidence.
That 55% who feel very prepared.
That belief leads to critical failure points.
Yes.
Inadequate investment recovery, relying on incomplete backup strategies, or just failing to run successful restoration tests.
Let's talk about the technical failures. If they have backups, why does it still take 8.3 days to recover?
The failure is often rooted in the identity infrastructure. If the ransomware attack compromises Active Directory, which it does 67% of the time, the entire recovery framework just collapses.
Because you can't trust anything.
Exactly. You might have file backups, but if you can't securely authenticate your own administrators or restore user identities, you can't bring systems back online securely.
So they're testing the wrong thing.
Many organizations only test restoring simple data backups, not the complex interconnected identity and configuration data you need to reboot a sophisticated enterprise network. They might be restoring old vulnerable VM snapshots, which means the attacker can just walk right back in.
So the recovery plan is purely theoretical. It only assumes the simplest form of failure.
Exactly. And that discrepancy is amplified during holiday attacks. A hopeful recovery plan that assumes a full network engineering team, a full identity team, and senior management available immediately.
That plan just clashes violently with the reality of a skeleton crew.
Making that 8.3-day average a very conservative estimate during the festive season.
Okay, so once the attacker is in and they know the staff is thin, where do they aim their firepower to guarantee maximum downtime? The data is crystal clear on this.
Identity systems.
Yeah.
It's the strategic bullseye for any modern ransomware operator. They are the keys to the entire IT kingdom.
They really are.
If you control Active Directory or Enter ID, you control network security policy, you control user permissions, and you control the ability to disable all the defensive tools.
And 67% of successful ransomware attacks involve a compromised identity infrastructure. Why is that specific number so high?
Because it maximizes their efficiency. By infiltrating the identity systems, attackers bypass the need for tedious system-by-system hacking.
They get a master key.
They get elevated network-wide privileges, allowing them to instantly disable security controls, deploy ransomware everywhere simultaneously, and modify group policies to make sure their access persists.
And it creates that almost unrecoverable state you mentioned. I mean, how do you even start the cleanup if the system that verifies who the cleanup crew is has been compromised?
It becomes a forensic nightmare. And the attackers, they know they're hunting for that persistence angle. They set up subtle backdoor accounts, they modify security settings, or they change service principal names.
And these changes are designed to be hard to spot.
Extremely subtle and easily missed during routine monitoring, especially when a security analyst is rushed or distracted during the holidays. They are literally hiding in plain sight within the identity system itself.
Okay, so beyond identity systems, what other critical weaknesses get magnified by this holiday staff vacuum?
Remote access points are always a favorite, but they become absolutely critical during seasonal periods.
It's because more people are working from home.
Right. The increase in staff working remotely or accessing core systems from unsecured temporary locations dramatically expands the attack surface. VPNs, remote desktop protocol or RDP endpoints, and other remote access tools are the primary entry points.
The perimeter isn't just expanded, it's often unsupervised.
And critically, poorly secured. The source highlights that the lack of consistent mandatory multi-factor authentication, or MFA, across all remote access points is a glaring weakness.
Still, after all these years.
Still. But even with MFA, organizations need to employ enhanced monitoring like geofencing, restricting connection times, and drastically enhancing the logging for all remote access during these peak risk periods to quickly flag suspicious connection attempts.
And finally, we have cloud setup mistakes, the byproduct of that rapid digital transformation that often outpaces security rigor.
Absolutely. Rapid cloud adoption often leaves behind vulnerabilities that attackers exploit when human vigilance is low. We're talking about simple configuration flaws.
Like what specifically?
Cloud storage buckets left unsecured, excessive permissions granted to temporary users or forgotten applications, or unsecured APIs connecting core applications.
The low-hanging fruit.
These misconfigurations are low-hanging fruit and very attractive starting points for complex, multi-stage attacks. When your cloud governance monitoring systems are running at half capacity, the attacker has all the time they need to leverage these simple mistakes into full network persistence.
So they're exploiting the confluence of relaxed vigilance and poor cloud architecture.
That's the perfect storm.
The holidays are already approaching for many of our listeners. We need to shift gears entirely. We know the problem is strategic, it's fast, and it targets the human element. Let's talk actionable solutions.
Okay.
Let's start with immediate fixes. 5 quick steps organizations can implement right now to shore up defenses for this peak risk period, directly countering that staff vacuum.
These immediate steps are really all about compensating for human absence with intelligent technology and external support.
Okay, number 1, setting up around-the-clock surveillance.
This is non-negotiable. If your internal security teams are understaffed by 50%, you must immediately compensate with external resources.
So bringing in outside help.
Utilize Managed Detection and Response, or MDR services, or External Security Operations Centers, SOCs, for guaranteed 24/7 coverage. This ensures sophisticated threats aren't missed just because your internal team is on vacation.
And there's a crucial detail here about tuning, right?
Yes. These services must be configured with holiday-specific alert limits. Network traffic slows down during the holidays, so normal alert thresholds might be too high. The systems need to be tuned to recognize unusual behavior relative to that low level of activity.
Number 2, using AI for threat detection. This is where automation takes over the surveillance role.
AI and machine learning don't take holidays, and that's their greatest strength here. They're essential because they can automatically detect unusual behaviors and new attack patterns, compensating for the lack of human analysts.
And we're not just talking about simple signature matching.
No, we mean behavioral analysis that spots strange system behaviors indicating the early stages of reconnaissance or lateral movement.
But there's a similar tuning issue here too, isn't there?
There is. Just like the MDR tuning, the AI model must be trained to understand normal holiday network patterns, like an expected spike in VPN usage or a drop in database queries, so it can distinguish between legitimate seasonal activity and a genuinely harmful intrusion.
Step 3 addresses that response failure we saw earlier, developing robust holiday incident response plans.
Standard IR plans just assume full staff availability. Holiday plans have to be specifically engineered to fail safely.
What does that mean, fail safely?
They must account for minimal staffing, potential delays in reaching critical decision makers like the CEO or legal counsel, and define clear escalation routes when key contacts are unavailable.
And the most critical component.
Pre-approved action limits. The available staff need the delegated authority to take essential containment steps, like immediately isolating a critical server or blocking a segment of the network without waiting hours for a decision maker who might be unreachable on a boat or up a mountain.
Step 4 goes straight back to that 67% vulnerability, safeguarding identity management systems.
Given the overwhelming evidence that identity systems are the primary target, they need dedicated, enhanced protection. This goes way beyond basic MFA.
So what are we talking about?
You need sophisticated identity threat detection and response, or ITDR, systems. ITDR is specialized. It watches the subtle, silent signals within the Active Directory itself, not just failed logins, but changes to group membership, subtle privilege escalates, or the creation of service printable names.
The things an attacker does after they're in.
These are the telltale signs that an attacker has gained a foothold and is establishing persistence. Prevention here stops that 8.3-day recovery nightmare before it even starts.
And finally, number 5, preparing for the inevitable by setting up and, crucially, checking offline backup procedures.
This is fundamental. Modern ransomware operators are sophisticated enough to immediately target and destroy your network-attached backups to guarantee their ransom payment.
So you need something completely separate.
The gold standard is the air-gapped backup. This means the backup copies are physically or logically disconnected from the production network and cannot be accessed by an attacker.
And it's not enough to just have them?
No. Before the holiday, you must verify that your latest critical data, especially the identity system configuration, is safely air-gapped. And, critically, you must conduct a successful test restoration to ensure that data is actually usable when you need it most.
Because if you haven't restored it recently.
If you haven't restored it successfully in the last 90 days, you don't have a backup. You just have a hope.
Okay, those 5 steps are crucial for immediate mitigation against a seasonal spike. But that 8.3-day recovery time suggests the problem is structural. We need a 365-day approach to long-term resilience.
Absolutely. We can't just patch things up for the summer break and then relax. The long-term strategy requires shifting organizational investment toward true resilience, moving past simple perimeter defense.
Let's start with those enhanced ITDR tools again. We introduced the jargon. Let's break down what specialized identity threat detection and response does that standard EDR or network monitoring misses.
Okay, so standard EDR watches what happens on the computer itself, file reads, process execution. Network monitoring watches packets. ITDR specializes in monitoring the state and health of the domain controller itself. And this is critical because attackers often compromise identity systems using legitimate credentials or internal tools. They don't necessarily drop malware on an endpoint.
So it's looking for abuse of legitimate tools.
Exactly. ITDR tracks those subtle internal changes, like suspicious modifications to user attributes or unusual privilege escalations. It helps organizations interrupt the attack sequence early, identifying the attacker's lateral movement before they deploy the final devastating payload.
It's the difference between catching a thief trying to steal the keys and finding them already inside the vault.
That's a perfect analogy.
The next long-term strategy addresses the human element and that 50% staff reduction problem. Staff education that goes beyond simple understanding.
We have to move past traditional click-through security awareness training. It's just no longer adequate against these strategically timed attacks. We need scenario-based training that accurately imitates the complex techniques used by real threat actors.
So what does a good scenario look like, rather than just clicking a bad link?
A good scenario is high fidelity and contextual. It's not just an email from an unknown sender. It's a phishing attempt, voice phishing, where the caller already knows the employee's team name, maybe references a known but fictional project.
And they create a sense of urgency.
And pressures them to input credentials quickly, to fix an emergency server failure right before they clock off for vacation. It mimics social engineering tactics that exploit stress and urgency, which are heightened during seasonal periods.
And the investment in this kind of high-fidelity training, it yields measurable results.
Oh, it pays huge dividends. Organizations that implement this kind of contextual training report a significant 47% increase in threat identification rates compared to those using only standard awareness approaches.
A nearly 50% improvement in the human firewall.
It dramatically reduces the likelihood of that initial holiday compromise.
And finally, closing that massive A&Z recovery crisis gap, putting recovery plans to the ultimate test.
This is the only way to move that 9% recovery rate up towards something respectable. Organizations must conduct frequent, comprehensive restoration drills using their air-gapped, offline backups.
But here's the mandate from the report.
Right? You must run tabletop exercises under realistic holiday staffing levels. This is how you identify process breakdowns before they occur during a real incident.
So what happens when you run a drill with a skeleton crew? What failure points emerge that you wouldn't see otherwise?
You find them immediately. You discover that the process for authorizing the purchase of new hardware relies on 3 signatories, and all 3 are unreachable. You realize that the required technical passwords for the recovery console are stored on the very server that was just encrypted. You find that the communication channels for the IR team, if the network is down, have never actually been tested.
So the test needs to include business continuity elements.
Alternative communication channels, defined decision-making frameworks for lower staff, and critical information stored safely, physically, or digitally, completely outside the network. We have to summarize the true economic damage here, because that $250,000 per day operational loss is only the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah, let's focus on the long-term, non-monetary costs that can truly cripple an organization.
The reputational harm and the erosion of customer trust can impact a company for years. If a breach causes sensitive client data to leak during the downtime, that can result in mass customer churn, legal action, and a stock price hit that far outweighs the immediate recovery cost.
Customers do not forget a security failure that ruins their holiday or compromises their data.
Never. And the price paid by the staff who have to bear the burden of that recovery is perhaps the most insidious cost of all.
It's the silent killer of resilience.
It really is. The burnout and retention problems for the IT staff who sacrifice their holidays, work 18-hour shifts, and deal with overwhelming pressure are severe.
And the source reveals a truly alarming statistic on this.
34% of companies report key security personnel quitting within 6 months of a significant holiday incident response effort.
1 in 3. 1 in 3 key security people leaving the organization because of the stress and exhaustion caused by inadequate preparation.
So investing in resilience becomes a critical HR and talent retention strategy, not just a technology expense.
Absolutely. The total costs, financial, regulatory, reputational, and human demand that ransomware resilience move from an optional expense to a mandatory continuous investment.
It has to.
Now, for the listener who is managing a small or mid-sized organization and doesn't have the resources for a full external MDR SOC team, what can businesses with limited resources focus on to protect themselves?
They need to focus intensely on high-impact, low-cost measures. The core list is short and effective.
Okay.
First, implement multi-factor authentication across all systems, not just email, but VPNs, admin portals, cloud services, everything.
Second,
Maintain secure, verified, air-gapped backups of critical data. Third, utilize cloud-based security services that provide enterprise-level protection without requiring extensive in-house expertise.
and fourth,
Develop simple, effective incident response plans that explicitly account for limited staffing, detailing exactly who calls whom and who has the authority to pull the plug. These fundamentals address the vast majority of common holiday attack vectors.
assuming an organization has implemented these defenses, what should they be watching for right now in the coming days that signals an imminent attack? What are those early warning signs?
Okay, organizations must be hyper-vigilant for signs of reconnaissance and persistent setting. Watch for unusual authentication attempts,
Like from strange places.
especially brute force attempts or activity outside business hours, or from unexpected geographic locations. This signals the initial access efforts.
What about changes within the system itself that might seem benign?
Look for the creation of new administrative accounts or subtle changes to security settings or backup configurations. The attackers are preparing their escape routes and destroying their tracks.
And network scanning.
Monitor continuously for internal network scanning activities targeting critical identity systems, domain controllers, or storage resources. These are internal reconnaissance activities before the deployment.
And what about unexpected software?
Crucial. Keep a sharp eye out for unexpected installations of remote access tools or utilities commonly used in the later attack chain, things like PSExec or known red team tools like Cobalt Strike. Investigate those immediately.
And the last, most subtle sign.
Any missing security logs or event data. Attackers try to disable logging to hide their actions, so you must have strong, separate, immutable logging infrastructure that sends data to a secured repository, ensuring forensic evidence is available, even if the main systems are compromised.
Finally, we have to briefly address the question of paying the ransom. It's a choice that often feels forced by that financial pressure you outlined.
The consensus advice from law enforcement remains absolutely firm. paying the ransom funds, and incentivizes future crime.
But we have to acknowledge the pressure.
We do. The decision is often forced by that overwhelming financial pressure from prolonged downtime at $250,000 per day. The key is resilience. Companies with robust, verified backups are in a much stronger position to focus solely on recovery without paying.
But there's a risk if you do pay.
They should be aware, though, that if they become known as a payer, they risk being retargeted almost immediately because they have proven to be a reliable source of revenue for the criminal enterprise.
This has been a sobering look at how sophisticated cyber warfare has become, centering on the simple strategic decision to exploit the fact that people take time off. We covered the stunning 78% attack rate in ANZ, the disastrous 9% recovery rate, and the critical importance of identity systems, which are the target in 67% of successful attacks.
The primary conclusion is that vulnerability is no longer simply about having outdated technology. It's a strategic choice made when preparation is theoretical, not rigorously practical.
Threat actors are professional strategists.
And organizations must respond with a professional strategy that respects the reality of human absence.
And this brings us to our final provocative thought for you to consider as you wrap up this deep dive. We have this growing inherent conflict. The increasing sophistication of AI-driven and strategically timed ransomware attacks, which operate 24/7 without fail.
Clashing directly with the fundamental human necessity of taking a break, respecting employee health, and stepping away from the keyboard.
So the profound question organizations need to answer is this. How do you build a security culture and a technological defense structure that genuinely respects employee well-being and the need for time off, while simultaneously guaranteeing that critical systems are always protected, even when the human defense line is intentionally thinned for the holidays?
It demands a fundamental shift in culture, in planning, and in investment. That is the challenge of modern resilience. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.